It's interesting to note that he focused a huge amount of his attention as the leader on affecting the engagement, the outlook, and the cohesion of his team. He immediately set about putting together a whole host of activities and, in some cases, precedents for his men to follow in now these very changed circumstances in which it looked like the mission of the expedition was now called into question, or maybe even over. First, he ordered that every man come together for an hour after dinner in the stateroom to socialize, talk, play games, compare notes, engage in theatricals. They were going to come together and they were going to enjoy each other's company, and they were not going to be off alone in their bunks thinking about how miserable their situation was. One day he decided to have a waltzing contest on the ice, and he was the lead-off dancer. And there was a wonderful afternoon of rating the waltzing skills of his men. He had dog races across the ice. He was constantly thinking about how to keep his men engaged, focused on the positive, and working together. Some of this was an attempt, right? It wouldn't have been lost on his men to keep the hours, now long days, because we're in the middle of the Southern Hemisphere summer, keep the days filled, keep the men from having too much time on their hands. But most of it was about something even more important. It was about what Shackleton referred to during the expedition as creating mental medicine, cohesion, things he could do or order his men to do that would make them feel like they were doing productive, enjoyable, upward-looking things with their time and their abilities. And he used that image over and over and over as a critical resource in leading and managing the 27 men that were his team. The real point is that mental medicine, managing the energy and outlook and engagement, and particularly the cohesion of your team, is at least as valuable and perhaps more valuable than any other resource that a leader has. In Shackleton's case, it was more valuable than the food supply. It was more important to his team's survival and success than the temperatures on the ice and then the oncoming specter of the Antarctic winter. How do we know that? How can we know that about our own leadership today? We know that because when we stop to consider what happens if the leader does not pay careful, consistent attention to the energy of his men, of his women, of his team, it is inevitable that a downward spiral sets in. Ennui, which could easily have become the weather front over these men in these circumstances, can become boredom. Boredom can become disbelief and despair. Despair and dissension can easily then, in high-stakes situations, become death.